Okay, I've opened up VS Code. That's the IDE I'll be using. First, let's create the files we'll need. Instapoll widget.html, then CSS and JS with the same names. Then we'll also need a CSS Resets file. This is for consistency across browsers. Okay, open up Instapoll widget HTML file. We'll begin with the doc type declaration. Change the name and add the style sheets. Ref instapoll widget.css, and then the reset. Now we'll add the script. There's only one script. Let's create the markup now. Start with a div, set the class to full flex container. Full because it will occupy the full screen of the browser, and flex for centering. Add another div. We need another flex container here. Make it centered and add a set class because it'll contain the set of options that we'll be using. Add another div inside, center it, and give it a class option, and set the ID to yes opt. We need an inline element next, so we take a span and set the ID to yes. The text inside the span will be yes, yes in capital, and again copy this now and change all the yes to no, and that should do it for that should be all the markup we need. Typically resets file will have a lot of defaults, but we'll only concentrate on the ones that are needed here. So the basic, of course, set everything to box sizing border box. That way nothing will extend greater than the sizes we set, even for the pseudo elements. The defaults for HTML and body will set the height and width. And the margins to 0. Some browsers give it a little margin, and that causes a little bit of jiggle in the web page. We'll get the body to have a minimum height of 100 VH. We'll We want it to occupy all of the screen height. I always add the U there for behavior. So optimize speed for text legibility. That should do it. For the style sheet, we will begin with importing a sans serif font called Varela Round from Google Fonts. I've already copied the link to a file. Let me just paste that here. We'll set the background of the body elements similar to the colors on Instagram stories. The -45 degree on the linear gradient is just for fun, and these colors I just make them up. A lot of red, a little less green, more blue, something like that. Even the second one is just more red, less green, more blue. For the full class, we'll set the min width to 100 VW and min height to 100 VH. The flex container needs to have its display property set to flex, and we'll just throw in some defaults for align items and align content. The centered class will center a flex child, so to do that we'll set the margin to auto. We'll set all margins to auto. For the set class we need a rectangle, so we'll set width to twice its height, width 200 px and height could be 100 px. Each of the options needs to occupy 100% of its height and 50% of its width, of the width of its parent element. So we can set those here and the borders background also. We'll align the text to the center and also set the font size to a larger font. 2em should be good enough. 2rem. We'll set the line height equal to its actual height, that way the text will be vertically centered. And we'll set the color to transparent. Y will be clear when we finish the other classes. Font family, the one we imported, Varela Round. As a fallback, we'll set sans serif. Of course, we want this to look like a button, behave like a button, so cursor pointer. Later, when someone clicks on it, we'll have to change the width, and for that we need to set the transition property to width. Also, we'll set the transition timing and duration. The yes OPT element will be on the left, so we set both the left border radii to 1.1 rem. That gives it a nice rounded corners. Only on the left though. The right edge will have sharp corners. We do the same to no OPT, just on the right side instead of the left. The yes element is a span element. We set the background to a linear gradient and set the background clip to text. Since the font color is transparent, the text will be of the background color. This is why we set color to transparent in the options class. A little turquoise color and something like greenish. The Z index is just in case. We'll give some similar styling to the no class, just a different color. And of course set the background clip to text. Moving on to the scripting part of the widget, we'll begin with activating strict mode introduced in ES5. The next step is to declare the constants option no and option yes. Option no is the span element with the ID set to no, while option yes is similarly the span element set with ID equals yes. Next we'll create the functions. The function that will be triggered when we click yes is unimaginatively called yes function. To simulate the percentage of users choosing an option, we'll create a random number and call it rand%. Math.random function generates a random floating point value from 0 to 1, which is exclusive. 1 is exclusive. So we get a value between 0 and 0.99. We'll have to multiply that with 101 to get an actual value between 0 and 100. To keep the position of the text constant after it has been clicked, we have to get its current position. Using getBoundingClientRect function will get us an object with height, width, top, left, and other positioning values. To position an element, we only need two of those attributes, top and left. That's what we're getting here. We need to get that for option yes also. That's the next thing to do. Well, now that we got the attributes, it's time to use them. We position the element absolute relative to the screen. Then set the top and left values. Once that's done, we'll set the line height to 2.35 rem. which is the height of the actual element. It would be a good idea to get the actual height of the element, but I just felt too lazy to create another variable. I already checked and the height is 37 px, 37 pixels, and 2.35 rem is 37.6 px, 37.76 pixels, so it should be fine. Also, by the way, if you've seen my video on Instagram, you'd notice I didn't do this there. I didn't position the text later after clicking. I didn't think of it back then. So, and later when I was making this, not really shooting, I thought, why not fix it? So this is how I've done it. Now we change the text to display the percentage. It should be capital Y. Okay. To visualize the ratio or proportion of the selected option, we set the parent element's width. For option yes, we we also set the background to dark gray and set the width to rand%. For option Y, we'll set it to remaining, but we won't set the background this time for option no. We haven't yet added the listeners, but once one of these options have been clicked, we don't want the user clicking them again. So we call a remove listeners function. Now, we haven't defined it yet, we'll define it in a minute. To make the no function, we just copy this and paste. Of course, we have to change all the yes to no. No, yes. Now here we'll define the remove listeners function. We have to remove we have to remove both the functions here, both event listeners here. Sorry, my bad. Now the only thing left is to add the event listeners themselves. So you gotta add event listener to yes and no. One thing we have to note here is that both add event listener and remove event listener, you will need to have the same arguments for use capture. Unless we use that, the remove event listener will fail silently and the user will be able to click on the options again and again.